From Janitor to humanity's final echo. Ethan Cole never meant to be a hero. But when an experiment went wrong, and the world collapsed under mutated horrors and psionic war machines, he didn't die. He changed. Now, as the bridge between man and monster, he holds the fate of what's left of Earth in his fractured hands. This is not salvation. This is Genesis.
In a world shattered by its own attempt to evolve, the only man who survived the experiment must decide if he will save what's left of humanity or replace it. Years after a genetic breakthrough unleashed a plague that divided the human species into monsters and anomalies, Ethan Cole, an accidental success of the serum, stands as the only known bridge between the two. Ethan must confront the truth of what he is and what he was always meant to become. He is not a cure. He is a choice. Ethan Cole didn't hate his job. Not exactly. It was quiet, predictable. After his divorce and a failed attempt at finishing community college, predictability was the one thing he had left. He'd grown used to the fluorescent hum of the underground hallways at Virion Labs, the gentle screech of his mop over sterile floors, and the distant rumble of machines behind sealed doors he was told never to open. He didn't ask questions. That was part of the job. Ethan wasn't cleared for anything beyond Sector 3, and even then, only during night shifts. Sector 3 handled waste disposal, air filtration, and maintenance. Nothing exciting. He liked it that way. But that night, the vent shaft in corridor D17 malfunctioned. He got the call from dispatch at 2:03 a.m. It was a routine fix. Unbolt the grill, reset the valve. 10 minutes tops. Except the corridor was marked Sector 7, a restricted zone. He almost turned around. He should have, but his clearance badge for some reason turned green. That's not right, he thought, frowning at the panel. The system must have glitched. He hesitated. But if he logged it and someone blamed him for missing the fix, he'd be back on unemployment by the end of the week. Ethan stepped through the door. The hallway was colder than the rest of the facility, frigid in fact, and bathed in low red emergency lighting. The air smelled faintly of metal and antiseptic, and something else, something sweet and rotting. He felt the unease crawl under his skin like ants. 5 minutes, he muttered. Get in! Get out! The lab at the end of the hallway had no identifier, just a small white sign. Observation Room 9B. The door was cracked open. Inside, the lights flickered. Something hissed in the air, like gas leaking from a pipe. Then he saw it, a shattered vial. A shimmering blue liquid oozed across the floor, smoking slightly. Glass sparkled like diamonds in the pale light. A label lay partially soaked. Elysium-X, Batch 4, a 77. Shit! He took a step back. That's when the vapor hit him. It didn't feel like breathing in gas. It felt like drowning. The air ignited in his lungs. He fell to his knees, clutching his throat as the world spun. His skin burned, vision blurred. His heartbeat crashed like thunder in his ears. A scream built in his chest, but it never came. Only silence. Crushing, swallowing silence. Then blackness. When Ethan woke, hours later, he was slumped against the cold wall of the hallway, barely able to breathe. His muscles trembled, and his head throbbed with a dull, persistent ache. The facility was a nightmare of flashing red lights and distant shouts. The low hum of the emergency sirens vibrated in his bones. He staggered to his feet, dizziness lancing through his skull. Every step felt like dragging weights, every breath like shards cutting his lungs. Security guards hurried past, barking orders, focused on their own chaos. No one noticed the disheveled janitor with glassy eyes and bloodied clothes weaving through the corridors. The main exit loomed ahead, a doorway to whatever remained of normal life. Outside, the desert night air hit his face like a cold slap. The stars hung silent and indifferent above. Ethan stumbled forward, muscles screaming for rest, lungs gasping for oxygen. When the first light of dawn cracked over the horizon, he found himself outside a rundown apartment complex on the city's edge. His hands shook as he fumbled with the lock. Inside, the stale air and flickering light greeted him like old friends. He locked the door behind him and collapsed, chest heaving. sweat streaming down his face. For the first time, the loneliness felt suffocating. He was alone, and something inside him was changing. Hours later, Ethan woke up lying on a broken couch, drenched in sweat, heart pounding like a war drum. He shuffled to the bathroom and stared at his reflection. His eyes, the irises, gleamed faintly golden, like molten metal catching the light. He blinked hard. It was gone. The radio crackled faintly in the corner. Code orange in lower levels. All janitorial and support staff are to remain in quarters. This is not a drill. Ethan swallowed hard. The lab was real. The virus was real. And he was no longer just a janitor. Ethan woke to a world that no longer felt like his own. The apartment was silent except for the occasional creak of the aging building and the distant wail of sirens. Outside, the city had begun to crumble. He sat up slowly, his body aching in ways he couldn't explain. His skin tingled, not like pins and needles, but as if every nerve was alive and buzzing, sharper than before. He flexed his fingers and marveled at the power behind them. A small crack echoed through the thin walls as his knuckles cracked with an unnatural force. He staggered to the bathroom mirror. The man staring back wasn't quite him. His jawline was sharper, his cheekbones more pronounced. His eyes, once dull and tired, were now a striking golden amber that caught the light and flickered like a living flame. The veins along his arms pulsed faintly beneath his skin, which had taken on an almost imperceptible shimmer, like a layer of armor just beneath the surface. He raised a trembling hand and watched in horror and awe as a shallow cut on his palm began to close, skin knitting itself back together before his eyes. The raw pain from the infection had dulled to a low hum, replaced by a strange new strength. Ethan fell back against the wall, breath coming fast and shallow. What was happening to him? But the change wasn't only physical. Inside, a storm raged. He could feel something alien clawing at the edges of his mind, whispering in a voice that was not his own. A primal hunger simmered beneath his skin, fierce, insistent, demanding more than mere food. He paced his cramped apartment, wrestling with the changes. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat. Every noise outside triggered a spike of anxiety. Am I becoming a monster? Memories flickered, visions of the ferals he'd seen, their empty eyes, their wild savagery. What separated him from them? How much longer before the hunger overtook his reason? He tested himself. He could hear the faintest sounds, the distant drip of water, a mouse scurrying behind the wall, whispered voices outside his door. He leapt onto the roof with ease, climbing over the railings with reflexes sharper than any he'd ever had. His senses were heightened. He could hear a whisper from 2 blocks away, see clearly in the near darkness of the stairwell. His reflexes were lightning fast. He moved with a fluid grace he'd never known. Yet each gift came with a curse. The hunger clawed at him again, stronger now. It wasn't just about survival. It was something deeper, darker, like a part of the virus was trying to rewrite his very soul. He clenched his jaw, fighting the urge to give in. I am still me. I'm not like them. But doubt crept in. The line between man and monster blurred with every passing hour. He thought about his old life, his daughter, his failed dreams, the loneliness. Was this power a second chance or a death sentence? When he finally dared to look outside, the city was a wasteland. Smoke curled from distant fires. Streets once bustling with life now lay deserted, littered with abandoned cars and scattered debris. Overhead, drones, military and private, patrolled the skies, their searchlights piercing through the thick haze. News reports streamed from cracked TV screens in shuttered stores. Containment breach at Virion Labs. Citizens are urged to stay indoors. Martial law enacted. Reports of aggressive attacks increasing. Authorities struggle to hold infected at bay. Ethan saw shadows moving in the alleys, ragged figures with rotten flesh and wild eyes, snarling and snapping as they hunted for prey. The government had failed. The virus was spreading, and humanity was losing. Amid the chaos, a message beeped softly from his hacked radio. If you're hearing this, you're not alone. Find Dr. Linnea Voss. She knows the truth about Elysium-X and might help you understand what you're becoming. Ethan clenched his fists. His life had shattered overnight, but somehow he was still standing, still fighting, and maybe, just maybe, he could find a way to save himself and what was left of the world. The sun had almost slipped beneath the horizon, casting the city into a gray twilight. Ethan moved cautiously through the maze of abandoned cars and shattered storefronts, muscles tense, senses razor-sharp. Every nerve screamed alert. He could hear them before he saw them. Low, guttural growls echoed from the shadows, feral, bestial, but strangely coordinated. Shadows flickered, twisting between broken buildings, moving like a pack of restless ghosts. Ethan gripped a rusty metal pipe tightly. He was no longer the janitor from before. Something inside him had shifted, something sharper, faster, stronger. Then they appeared. 3 figures staggered into the flickering streetlight. Their bodies were gaunt and twisted, gray skin hanging in loose shreds. Their ragged clothes clung to emaciated frames, stained with dried blood. Their eyes, wild and hollow, glimmered with a faint, unnatural light. These were the ferals. Ethan's heart slammed in his chest. The nearest lunged forward, jaws snapping, teeth broken and yellowed. The stench of decay hit him like a wave. He took a step back, raising the pipe. "Stay back!" But they didn't understand. They circled him with jerky, spasmodic movements, snarling and growling in a guttural chorus. He swung the pipe with all his might. The first creature's head cracked under the blow, and it collapsed in a heap, twitching. 2 more advanced. Ethan dodged with uncanny speed, a reflex born of his transformation. But a sharp claw scraped his forearm, pain flaring red-hot. He tasted copper, his own blood. Despite the injury, a strange fire surged inside him. Hunger, power, something he barely understood. Suddenly, from the shadows, a larger figure stepped forward. Bigger, more muscular, with eyes that burned like molten gold. The creature moved with unnerving grace, muscles rippling beneath tattered skin. It paused, observing Ethan carefully. The Alpha. It didn't attack. Instead, it tilted its head as if studying him, weighing him. Ethan froze, confusion flooding his mind. This wasn't mindless rage. The Alpha snarled low, a sound less like a threat and more like a warning. Then, with a sharp gesture, the remaining ferals retreated into the darkness. Ethan's breath was ragged. What was that, he thought? A leader? A protector? Or something else entirely? He watched as the Alpha lingered a moment longer, its glowing eyes locking onto his before it disappeared into the night. Back in the shadows, Ethan's mind raced. They aren't just mindless monsters, he thought. There's some kind of connection, like a hive mind, but there's hierarchy. That bigger one acted like a leader. Maybe it controls or influences the others. He flexed his injured arm, wincing as the wound began to close on its own. The feral's instincts were terrifying, but maybe their weaknesses were their coordination. He realized his own transformation might give him an edge, but the Alpha's gaze haunted him. Was it watching him, judging him, or waiting for something? Ethan knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning of a much darker battle. The city bled shadows. Buildings, once gleaming with life, stood like silent tombstones under the smoky sky. Distant gunfire echoed in bursts, sharp, violent reminders that the world outside was burning. Ethan moved through the ruins of downtown, staying low. His body was stronger now, senses sharper than ever, but the hunger never truly left him. It whispered with every heartbeat. Still, something else had begun to haunt him, a low, rhythmic hum in the air, droning, mechanical, watching. He wasn't just running from the ferals anymore. High above, a matte black surveillance drone banked hard over the skyline, silent as a ghost. Its lens adjusted, locking onto a heat signature moving with unnatural speed and agility between buildings. In the Black Halo Mobile Command Unit, an armored transport hidden beneath the ruins of a financial district, Commander Adrienne Rourke watched the screen. "There," she said coldly. "Subject 027, confirmed Elysium-X anomaly, still humanoid." Her second-in-command, Vargas, leaned in. "You want a live capture?" "No," Rourke replied. "We need a live capture." Ethan had no idea the drone overhead had already tagged him. Virion's AI system had logged his movements, analyzed his physiology, and flagged him as a Class Red variant, anomalous Elysium-X host showing controlled mutation. In short, Ethan was one of a kind. Ambush in the alleys. It happened fast. Ethan ducked into an alley to avoid a roving feral pack, but before he could breathe, something cracked in the air behind him. A high-pitched whine. His body moved instinctively as a tranquilizer dart embedded into the wall just inches from his face. He dove for cover. Figures in black exosuits dropped from the rooftops like wraiths, sleek, high-tech, and armed to the teeth. Their helmets glowed with HUD interfaces, locking onto him. Target acquired. Engaging. Ethan's instinct screamed. He vaulted a dumpster, grabbing a loose steel pipe from the ground. A soldier charged, electro-baton swinging wide. Ethan parried, spun, and slammed the pipe into the soldier's ribs. Armor cracked, and the man dropped with a grunt. He didn't want to kill them. He didn't even know who they were. But they didn't care. He was a target, a commodity, an anomaly that couldn't be allowed to run free. A smoke grenade exploded beside him, blinding white flooding the alley. Ethan coughed, stumbled, then vaulted through a broken second-story window and rolled into a boarded-up apartment. His side was bleeding. A bullet had grazed him. He could hear their boots pounding the concrete below, moving methodically, efficient, inhuman in their precision. That's when he saw the logo on the soldier's fallen badge through the haze. VIREON, Black Halo Division. His stomach dropped. They knew who he was, what he was, and they were hunting him, not because he was infected, but because he wasn't feral, because he was stable, because he was a success. Elysium-X was never meant to cure anything, he realized, chest heaving. It was a weapon, and I'm the one thing they can't control. Bleeding, exhausted and half-mad from the hunger gnawing at his core, Ethan slipped into the sewers. He knew now that it wasn't just the ferals he had to survive. It was the company that created them, and they had no intention of letting their greatest mistake walk away. Ethan didn't trust the message. It had been a static-laced radio broadcast, barely decipherable, but it mentioned her name, Dr. Linnea Voss. The voice had said she could help, that she knew what was happening to him. He had nothing else to cling to. After escaping Black Halo, Ethan followed a chain of scattered coordinates, old Virion data caches buried in emergency evacuation files, until he found an address hidden deep beneath the city's southern medical sector. A long-forgotten Virion research substation. He found it buried beneath a collapsed parking garage. Concrete cracked like eggshells above steel-reinforced doors. The lights were dead. The silence was absolute. But something felt watched. Inside, the world changed. The air was dry and sterile, humming with the faint whir of hidden generators. Holographic interface panels flickered weakly. Rusted gurneys and shattered data cores lined the walls like the skeletons of forgotten science. Ethan descended into the facility's core, clutching a stolen sidearm with shaking fingers. His senses were alert. Every vibration, every subtle change in air pressure, painting a mental map in his head. And then he saw her. She stood at the center of the main lab, a tall woman in a tattered white lab coat, sleeves rolled up, hands gloved in surgical leather. Her hair was streaked with gray, face lined with fatigue, but still sharp. She turned as he approached, not startled, not afraid, as if she'd been expecting him. "Ethan Cole," she said quietly. Ethan's grip tightened on the pistol. "How do you know who I am?" "I'm Dr. Linnea Voss, and I helped make what's inside you." She didn't try to lie. Over a pot of reconstituted coffee and low lighting, she told him the truth, more than he was ready to hear. Elysium-X was never about curing disease. It was a military augmentation project from the start, enhancing soldiers, creating perfect operatives who could heal, adapt, survive anything. But the human body wasn't ready. Most subjects became what you call ferals. Their minds couldn't hold the infection. "And me?" Ethan asked, voice raw. "You were exposed to a contaminated version, a flawed delivery vector. But your brain chemistry adapted instead of collapsing. You're not immune, Ethan. You're something new. A bridge between what we tried to make and what we lost control of. She showed him files, old project logs, test subjects, notes scrawled in desperation and guilt. In one of the logs, she whispered something that made his blood run cold. The alpha ferals? They're not random. They're stabilizing, organizing. They've begun forming something like structure, a hierarchy, and they recognize you. Why? He asked. Because they think you're one of them. Or worse, something they're supposed to follow. Before he could process it, alarms blared. Security feed, black halo. They tracked me, Ethan said, voice sharp. Dr. Voss nodded grimly. Then we need to move. You're not ready to fight them yet, but there's one more place you need to see. Where it all started. Where the original batch of Elysium-X was created. Ethan looked at her, uncertain. Why are you helping me? She hesitated. Then, because I built the virus that destroyed the world, and you're the only person who might be able to fix it. 13 months ago. Dr. Linnea Voss used to believe in miracles. For decades, she'd worked on the frontier of human biology. Regeneration, cellular repair, neural enhancement, science that could change the world. But miracles, she learned too late, always came at a cost. She adjusted the lens on the gene sequencer, watching as the latest culture, sample HX9, flared bright orange under UV light. It was working. Again. Neurological adaptation stable for 72 hours. Sample survived immune rejection. Her voice dictated into the terminal. She paused, staring into the glowing vial. And demonstrates baseline accelerated regeneration. A tremble passed through her fingers. They'd done it. Project Elysium-X wasn't just a theory anymore. It was alive. Virion had started as a biotech innovator, but the moment military contracts came into play, everything changed. Suddenly, Elysium-X was no longer about healing soldiers with burn wounds or stopping neurodegenerative diseases. Now it was about designing apex humans, super soldiers immune to pain, capable of instant recovery, fearless, obedient. What we're creating isn't a cure, Linnea had warned in the boardroom, surrounded by suits and the steel-eyed executives. It's a loaded gun. But the funding doubled, tripled. And then came Black Halo, Virion's private enforcement wing, men in black exosuits who patrolled the labs. No names, no questions. Linnea began working longer hours. Her colleagues stopped speaking freely. Some were reassigned, some vanished. One morning, she found blood on the elevator floor. No one spoke about it. Subject number 001 had been a young woman, former athlete, selected for her genetic compatibility. She survived the injection for 4 days. On the 5th, she tore through 2 feet of steel and ripped her handler's throat out with her teeth. The security footage never made it to public record. By subject number 009, they had begun using chained rooms and full restraints. Ferality, they called it. A neurological meltdown that rewired the brain with pure survival instinct. It wasn't rabies. It wasn't rage. It was something deeper. Elysium-X didn't just alter cells, it rewrote identity. Linnea watched the footage of subject number 013, once her friend Dr. Marco Thane, gnawing on his own fingers, his eyes glowing faint gold, locked in a glass cage. She smashed the monitor, left the room, vomited in the sink. The project had become a nightmare. And then came the anomaly. Subject number 027, male, civilian, accidental exposure. Ethan Cole, no controlled setting, no trial, just a fluke, contaminated runoff and wrong place, wrong time, and yet no ferality. His neural scans came back stable, cognitive functions intact, emotional response normal, enhanced tissue recovery, strength, and sensory input, but no collapse. Voss stared at his early test files for hours, unable to look away. "What are you?" she'd whispered. Or maybe, "What did I miss?" Elysium-X hadn't failed completely. It had chosen. It had evolved. But before she could pull him in for study, the lab was shut down. Black Halo purged level 9. All samples destroyed, all personnel scattered or silenced. She went into hiding, carrying one backup drive, one copy of everything. She knew Virion would come for her eventually. But now, as she looked across the lab table at Ethan Cole, subject number 027 alive and breathing, she saw what she hadn't seen back then. Not a weapon, not a miracle, a second chance. The warning sirens howled through the old substation like a scream from the bones of the earth. Ethan was already on his feet, body humming with adrenaline. Dr. Voss grabbed a silver hard case, her only copy of the original Elysium-X research, and started packing portable drives and vials into a rucksack. "They found us," she said, breath sharp. "They always do." From the main monitor, grainy surveillance feeds showed black halo troops in black exo armor breaching the surface tunnel. 7 units. Armed, quick, clean. They moved like they'd trained for this specific room, this specific moment. "Why now?" Ethan hissed. Voss didn't look up. "Because you're not just proof, Ethan. You're the only unpredictable variable left, and they're not here to take you in." A second alarm blared, a deeper one. EMP shielding breached. "They're going to fry the lab," she added. "Everything. We have 5 minutes, maybe less." The facility had once been vast, meant to support quarantine research during outbreaks. Voss led Ethan down a narrow shaft behind a broken cryochamber wall, then into a forgotten subtunnel layered with rust and dust. They moved fast. Ethan's newly honed senses flicked to every motion, his hearing picking up the thud of boots, the clicking of firearms being readied. He smelled the synthetic oil of exo-armor above them, felt their searchlight beams brushing through dust clouds like silent lances. And just behind the wall, a black halo soldier paused. For a heartbeat, Ethan held his breath, felt his pulse slow, felt it, the predator awareness from something inside him that wasn't entirely human anymore. But the soldier moved on, for now. Behind them, the lab exploded. A concussive boom rolled through the tunnels, fire and debris crashing against reinforced concrete. Ethan turned instinctively, shielding Voss as a wave of pressure swept over them. She coughed hard, covering her mouth. "That was my life's work," she said bitterly. "All of it. Gone." Ethan helped her up. "You said we had to go somewhere else? Where it started?" Voss nodded. "A facility outside the quarantine zone. Original Phase 0 lab. We'll need to move through feral territory to get there." He tensed. "That's suicide." "Not for you," she said quietly. Suddenly, gunfire. The tunnel behind them erupted in flashes as black halo soldiers burst through the smoke, weapons drawn. They weren't trying to kill, yet. Trank darts hissed through the air, one grazing Ethan's shoulder. He spun, moving faster than they expected. He ducked behind cover and threw a broken pipe like a javelin. It struck a soldier's shoulder and cracked armor. Another fired. Voss screamed as a blast ricocheted off a wall near her head. Ethan's eyes blazed gold for a moment, something in him surging forward like a wave. He moved, too fast. He was on the nearest soldier in an instant, tearing the weapon away, knocking him out with a strike that bent metal. The others hesitated. They had trained for ferals. Not for this. Ethan grabbed Voss's hand and pulled her down a maintenance shaft. He slammed the door shut behind them and welded it shut with a sparking pipe left from the blast. They fell into silence again, breathing, alive. Above them, black halo regrouped, but they had vanished deeper into the veins of a dying city. As they emerged into the ruins of a lower subway line, moonlight cracked through broken concrete, falling across Ethan's face. He looked less like a man now, more like something caught between light and shadow. Dr. Voss turned to him, eyes haunted. "They'll never stop. You understand that, right?" Ethan nodded. "Then we make it count," he said. "Where's the Phase 0 lab?" She pointed east. "Through what's left of Zone 9. Commander Adrian Rourke stood alone before the mission holotable, arms crossed behind her back. Her face was pale under the harsh blue lights, skin pulled tight by sleeplessness and something colder. Frustration. She'd failed. Subject 27 had slipped from her grip, again. Projected across the table was a full biometric files. Ethan Cole, male, 29. No prior criminal record, no known military background, no augmentation. Yet the post-contact footage told a different story. Timestamp 53317. Visual, Cole disables 3 operatives using improvised weapons. Vital signs shows heightened reflex, subdermal regeneration, and pulse rate control consistent with Tier 2 exoadaptives. Vargas entered the room. He took out 2 men in reinforced armor without lethal force. Rourke didn't turn. He's holding back. You think he's stabilizing? I think he's becoming something we didn't predict. She tapped the table and expanded the thermal scan overlay, highlighting Cole's vitals in red. Cognitive retention intact. Enhanced reaction time. No signs of neural decay. No ferality. He's not breaking down like the other, she muttered. He's learning. She accessed a higher-level file, restricted even within Black Halo. Omega clearance data from Virion's central AI archive. She had stolen it. Even Vargas didn't know. Project Elysium-X. Omega variable, Ethan Cole, classification, red risk status, unstable prime threat potential, hive control detected. Her eyes scanned the final line. Subject 27 exhibits partial feral resonance, potential proto-alpha influence. Her gut turned. Cole wasn't just stable. He wasn't just evolving. He was broadcasting something to the ferals, drawing them, influencing them, possibly even controlling them at a subconscious level. Not a weapon, a nexus, a living convergence of man, virus, and whatever twisted ecosystem the ferals were building out there in the quarantine zones. Rourke pulled up her direct line to Virion's AI command channel. Her voice was low, deliberate. Commander Rourke, field leader of Black Halo. Subject 27 is no longer a retrieval target, requesting protocol escalation, approval for full termination. The AI answered in its soft, sexless tone. Request denied. Directive unchanged. Live capture. She slammed her fist onto the table. You're going to get people killed. The data in Subject 27 is worth every casualty. Silence. Then a new voice entered the channel. Male, cold, familiar. Commander Rourke, said Director Virion himself, breaking radio silence, you do not yet understand what Ethan Cole is, but you will. The feed cut. Rourke stood still for a moment. Then she turned to Vargas. Prepare Alpha Suppression Team. We're going to follow Cole into Zone 9. You sure? Vargas asked. That's Feral Central. We'll be blind. Good, she said. A slow smile curled on her lips. Let's see what our miracle boy does when he's surrounded by monsters that think he's their messiah. Ethan had seen ruins before. Collapsed neighborhoods, abandoned hospitals, streets cracked open like old scars. But Zone 9 was different. It felt wrong, like the world here had gone quiet too long ago. And whatever had taken its place wasn't waiting to be found. The sky was a thick bruise above them, clouded with ash and smoke. Dead power lines hung low across the old city checkpoint, signs half-scorched. Beyond the gates, nature had begun to reclaim the city. Vines coiled over collapsed buildings. The air shimmered faintly with spore motes, glowing like static fireflies. A former Virion drone buzzed above, scavenged and reprogrammed by ferals long ago. Ethan stepped through the gate first. Voss hesitated. I need to know something, he said. What? If I lose control, if I change, you won't. But if I do, I'll stop you. She looked him in the eye. But I don't think I'll have to.
Zone 9 wasn't just feral infested. It was shaped. Buildings had been hollowed and reinforced with twisted steel and bone. Hives built from scavenged tech and organic matter climbed walls like tumors. The deeper they went, the more order Ethan saw beneath the chaos. Symbols carved into concrete, echoes of ritual, patterns, purpose. This doesn't look like mindless infection, Ethan whispered. Voss nodded, keeping her voice low. They're evolving. We thought the virus was degenerative, but I think it's learning. At the base of an old church, they found the first body, human, torn apart, not by claws or teeth, but precision. Ritualistic markings and feral glyphs surrounded the corpse. Ethan felt a weight in his chest, not fear, not grief, recognition. Later, as they passed beneath a cracked overpass, Ethan froze mid-step. A noise, deep and distant, a pulse, not sound, not quite light, more like a sensation in his skull, like a distant voice vibrating through bone. He staggered, dropped to one knee. "Ethan?" Voss reached for him. His eyes flickered gold. Veins beneath his skin glowed briefly, like the city was calling him. He heard them then. Whispers, hundreds, thousands, in unison. "You are not prey. You are not one of them. You are incomplete." And then silence. He gasped, the connection severed. "What just happened?" Voss asked, voice shaking. "They saw me," he whispered, "but not all of them, just one." Far above, on the roof of a shattered hospital, a figure stood, still as stone. A feral, yes, but not like the others, tall, upright, coated in blackened bone armor fused to its flesh. Its face was partially intact, eyes burning like twin suns. It stared at Ethan, not with hunger, with curiosity. And then it vanished into the shadows. Voss pulled Ethan deeper into the city. He didn't resist, but his hands trembled, not from fear but from recognition. Whatever was waiting in the heart of Zone 9, it already knew his name.
The alpha feral stood motionless amid a cathedral of bone and metal. Above, 1,000 mutated eyes, some human, some not, watched him from the hive walls. Below, hundreds of ferals knelt in silence, heads bowed, their bodies twitching in cadence with a slow, pulsing rhythm. The alpha did not speak with words, it thought, and they listened. He who walks between the network had changed. In the beginning, they were chaos, teeth and hunger, instinct and rage. But something in the viral architecture had begun to shift. At first a flicker, then a pattern, a consciousness. The alpha was the first to rise from it, a convergence of host and code, a singular will, born from collapse. And now something new was entering its domain. Not prey, not predator, not one of us, but still, bound to the song. It had felt Ethan Cole the moment he crossed the threshold into Zone 9. A resonance, like tuning forks finding each other across a ruined world. The pulse in the air, the bloodlight in his eyes, the part of the hive that still answered to him, without him even knowing. The alpha moved into the mirror spire, a chamber where the walls reflected not image, but essence. There it saw what Ethan could become, a fully adapted nexus, no collapse, no madness, a creature who could walk between the feral and the human, choosing either path, or forging a third. It terrified the others. The lesser alphas had hissed and howled, demanding his destruction. They wanted to consume him before his potential could destabilize the hive hierarchy. But the alpha feral, the awakened one, did not fear him. It remembered what it was like to be human. Once, a long time ago. Ethan Cole was not a threat. He was an answer. The alpha extended its hand. From the walls, drones slithered out, carrying shards of metal and bone, wet with memory. A structure was being formed, not a trap, but a place of judgment. He would not kill Ethan. He would test him, and if Ethan failed, he would take him back into the fold. 1,000 ferals screamed in unison, their voices merging into a psionic tremor that rippled through Zone 9. The alpha stepped into the center of the hive's pulse, eyes glowing like eclipse fire. "Come to me, child of the rift. Come and choose what you are, before the world decides for you." They reached the entrance at dusk, tucked beneath a crumbling train depot and masked by layers of spore-choked ivy and dust. The Phase Zero lab looked less like a facility and more like a tomb. A biometric scanner, miraculously still functional, chirped to life as Dr. Voss pressed her palm to the reader. "Welcome, Doctor." Linnea Voss, authorization confirmed. With a hydraulic groan, the steel door slid open. The air inside was dry and sterile, untouched by the infection mutating the world outside. Cold white lights flickered to life, revealing pristine walls, shuttered cryopods, abandoned terminals, and shadows. So many shadows. Ethan followed in silence, but something twisted in his gut the deeper they went. The lab wasn't unfamiliar. The smell of antiseptic, the hum of old power cells, the echo of footsteps. He had been here before. Not in memory, in muscle, in instinct. As if his very cells remembered the place. He placed a hand on a wall, and the room flickered. Not literally, in his mind. A flash, a screaming child, a cold needle, a woman's voice whispering, "It'll be quick, Ethan. You'll sleep right through it." He ripped his hand back. Voss brought him to the core archive, a ring of sealed servers humming quietly behind reinforced glass. She typed in an override code and accessed a series of encrypted logs. Years before the outbreak, she began, Virion started splicing viral genome fragments into children, not infected subjects, selective candidates. The idea was to create immunity, but when the models failed, they shifted the goalposts. She pulled up a file marked Subject 027, Ethan Cole. Status, recovered outcome, dormant adaptive potential, phase 0 anomaly. Ethan stepped back. "That's not possible," he said. "I lived a normal life. I was just—" "You were never just normal, Ethan." Voss turned to him, her voice cracking slightly. "They didn't want a cure. They wanted a bridge. Someone who could connect both sides of the virus, control it, communicate with it, survive it." She played a recording. A young boy, maybe 7, sitting quietly in a chair, medical tubes in his arms, a doctor asking him questions. "How do you feel today, Ethan? The lights are too loud. Do you see the shapes again? They're not shapes. They're voices. What do they say? They want me to leave my body. They say I don't belong in one." The child looked up, and Ethan saw his own eyes staring back at him. Ethan stumbled away from the console. His breath caught. The walls felt like they were collapsing inward. The pressure behind his eyes, the golden light that flickered in his reflection, the whispers in Zone 9. They weren't new. They were remembered. "I'm one of them," he whispered. "I'm not human." Voss stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You're more than human. You're what comes after. That's why Black Halo wants to capture you. That's why the Ferals follow you, and that's why the Alpha is waiting." Far above them, unseen by either, a tremor shook the ground. Ferals across Zone 9 lifted their heads. The Alpha Feral stepped out onto the cathedral spire of the hive, staring toward the Phase 0 lab. It could feel Ethan now, closer, awakened, ready to choose. The silence between them had stretched too long. Ethan sat on the rusted lip of an observation terminal, knuckles white around a half-splintered mug of synth coffee. The screens around them displayed flickers of old data, decayed test logs, heat maps, genomic splicing errors. Voss stood with her back to him, staring through a thick pane of observation glass into the old testing chamber. It looked like a theater built for ghosts. Rows of locked gurneys, steel chairs bolted to the ground, a mural of black glass where children once spoke to men in suits with artificial smiles. "They called it Elysium-X because it sounded beautiful," Voss said finally. "A cure that would elevate us beyond biology, beyond death. A paradise carved in flesh." Ethan said nothing. "I helped build the first protocols. I named the genome clusters. I sat in meetings and pitched to investors while we tested on children." Her voice caught. "We told ourselves it was for humanity, but it was for control. Always control." She turned to face him. Elysium-X wasn't meant to save lives. It was meant to reformat them, to overwrite genetic instinct with programmable obedience. She pulled up a file marked Human Directive Protocol, Seraph Class, Target Outcome, Post-Human Obedience System, PHOS. Status, Failed Integrity, Subject 027 Exempt. Ethan stared at the screen. "You weren't building immunity." "We were building gods," she said softly. "Manufactured messiahs, perfect soldiers, immune to pain, to aging, to fear, and utterly loyal." Ethan laughed bitterly. "And I slipped through the cracks." "No," Voss said. "You didn't slip through. You rejected the code. You were the only one who fought back." She walked closer now, her voice lowering. "I leaked your case to an outside contact. I flagged your records. I even sabotaged your dormancy injection when you were a child, which lets you grow up without them finding you. You protected me? I freed you. But you built the system." She nodded, tearful. "And now I'm trying to destroy it." Ethan looked at her, eyes sharp. "Why tell me this now?" "Because the Alpha is waiting. And the hive doesn't just see you as a leader, Ethan. It sees you as a correction. To what? To us, she whispered. To Virion. To me. To the belief that we could shape evolution in a boardroom. From deep within the Phase Zero lab, something stirred. An echo of code long dormant began to pulse again in the servers. Not warning, a welcome. Elysium-X was never just a virus, it was a signal. And Ethan had finally come home. The entrance to the Hive Cathedral wasn't guarded, it was inviting. Vines pulled back as Ethan approached. The walls, once pulsating with heat and twitching muscle, went still, silent, like the hush before a breath is drawn. Dr. Voss waited at the perimeter. "You sure about this?" she asked, voice low. "No," Ethan replied, "but I have to know." And he stepped inside. The interior of the hive was massive, spiraling upward in impossible geometry. Chunks of metal, bone, and human technology were fused together like a living altar. The air shimmered with a gold-tinted pulse, the same resonance he felt in his veins. Ferals lined the walls, kneeling in eerie stillness. They didn't hiss or charge. They watched, as if awaiting judgment. At the far end of the chamber, atop a jagged platform of fused spinal columns, he stood, tall, armored in obsidian bone and crimson vein steel. Half of his face still bore the remnants of humanity, skin pale, mouth shaped almost like a smirk. The rest was the virus perfected, sleek, weaponized, and beautiful in a way that repulsed Ethan, the alpha feral, the awakened one. A conversation without words. The alpha did not speak, but Ethan heard him, not with ears, with thought, with blood. You were not made. You were grown. You carry the seed. You survived the test. You are not like them. You are not like us. You are between. Ethan clenched his fists. You want me to join you. I want you to see what you are, what they did, what you can become. The alpha stepped forward. Each step echoed in Ethan's spine. Images flooded his mind, not memories, projections. Ethan leading the ferals, no longer monstrous but evolved. A world reborn under the rule of post-human sentience. No war, no pain, just unity, purpose, silence. It was seductive. It was terrifying. The alpha raised one hand. A massive feral drone emerged from the shadows, towering, plated in bone like a living tank. It roared and charged Ethan with inhuman speed. Ethan didn't move until the last second. Then he did what instinct told him. He let go. His body pulsed. Veins lit like golden wires. Bones cracked, reformed. For a moment he became something else. Faster, stronger, untouchable. He destroyed the feral in 3 moves. The final strike echoed like a thunderclap. The cathedral was silent. The alpha stepped down slowly, his expression unreadable. You are ready, but still you resist. Ethan looked up, breath ragged. Because I still choose, and I choose not to be you. The alpha stared, then it laughed. Not mockery, approval, and then it attacked. Faster than the drone. Smarter, brutal. The two collided like titans in a storm of claws, bone, and psychic screams. Ethan matched him, barely. Their movements mirrored, echoes of the same source code written in different hands. The battle ended not in death, but in stillness. They stood inches apart, locked in a stalemate. The alpha spoke one final time. We are both broken halves, one of flesh, one of flame. When the others come, you must choose. Them or us, or something new. Then he stepped back into the shadows and vanished. The hive pulsed once. Then the ferals, all of them, bowed their heads to Ethan. Outside the cathedral, Voss looked up from her hiding spot as Ethan emerged, his shirt torn, skin glowing faintly with biolight. What happened? He didn't answer right away, but his eyes were gold. I'm not done changing, he said, and neither is the world. The city lay broken, but alive. Ethan stood at the edge of the Hive Cathedral, his silhouette framed by the dying light of a blood-red sun. Around him, the ferals stirred, not as mindless monsters, but as something different. Disciplined, waiting, watching. His presence was a beacon, where once they snarled and scattered at human approach, now they gathered, quiet, obedient, and attentive. Ethan raised his voice, not a roar, but a command forged of clarity and vision. Tonight we leave the ruins behind. The ferals responded, not with growls, but with a chorus of low, unified hums that vibrated through the cracked earth. We move beyond this city, Ethan continued, beyond fear and hate. We're not their monsters. We are the future. Dr. Voss approached, her face shadowed by worry. They'll come for you, Ethan. Black Halo won't let this go. I know, Ethan said, eyes scanning the horizon where smoke still rose. But if we don't lead them, he said quietly, someone else will. Through shattered streets and shattered lives, Ethan led the ferals, a procession not of destruction, but of ascendance. As they moved, civilians peered out from hiding places. Some fled in terror, some watched in stunned silence. A few whispered hope. The old world was crumbling, the new one was stirring. Far beyond the city, across continents, encrypted channels buzzed with alerts. Black Halo Command. Subject 027 active. Zone 9 breach imminent. All units mobilize. World leaders whispered fears of bioterror and apocalypse. But for Ethan, this was no end. It was a beginning. As night swallowed the ruins, Ethan paused, looking at the stars, bright, distant, and cold. We're not just surviving, he murmured. We're evolving. And somewhere deep within the hive's pulse, the Alpha Feral watched and waited. Location, Black Halo Global Command, undisclosed Arctic facility. Commander Eliri Rourke slammed a fist against the hollow table as satellite footage flickered. Ethan, glowing faintly gold, leading a swarm of ferals across a dead freeway toward the quarantine perimeter. Around her, high-ranking officers and corporate liaisons whispered urgently into headsets. Satellite confirms. Zone 9 breached. Estimated feral count, 3,000 and growing, but controlled. Target Alpha, Subject 027, sentient, coordinated, evolving. Rourke's voice cut through the room like steel. He's not a breach, he's a broadcast. Emergency briefings, UN Biosecurity Summit. At the UN emergency session in Geneva, diplomats gathered under high alert. Emergency articles were enacted. Sovereign bioweapons policies were overruled. A tense silence filled the chamber as a hologram of Ethan flickered above the council floor. Tall, glowing, eyes unreadable. General Mahmoud al-Basir of the Global Biodefense Accord rose slowly. This is no longer a viral outbreak. This is a post-human insurrection. If we wait, we cede the future. Some called for nuclear sterilization of the infected regions. Others urged negotiation. Few admitted their fear. What if Ethan is right? Behind closed doors, at Virion HQ, CEO Alana Reddick watched it all unfold from her skybound penthouse. The Phase Zero leak had gone viral. Public trust was disintegrating. Virion stocks had cratered. Ethan was supposed to be a key, she whispered. A vice president coughed quietly. He is. We just lost the lock. She turned toward the glass and watched drones scramble across city skies. Send out the culling agents. Deploy Project Godblind. The VP paled. That protocol kills everything in the target genome cluster, including... I know what it does, she snapped. He made his choice. Now we make ours. Code of desperation in the shadows. Black Halo directive. In a war room bathed in red alert, Commander Rourke drafted a classified message to all operative units. Subject 027 has destabilized containment. Moral uncertainty is irrelevant. Contagion is ideological as much as biological. Commence operation, glass veil, any city that shows signs of submission to the ferals, wipe it. We are not fighting a virus, we are fighting the next species. Meanwhile, across the net, a countercurrent surged. Anonymous broadcasts lit up the deep web, showing clips of Ethan saving survivors, sparing soldiers, protecting children from out-of-control ferals. They called him The golden mind, the signal. The next profit hashtags exploded. Protesters swarmed outside Virion Labs. Whispers of a new evolution stirred among the young, the sick, the desperate. Ethan hadn't declared war, but the world was already choosing sides. As the camera drones refocused on the slow, unstoppable march of Ethan's army moving toward the borders of dead cities, one anchor said what millions feared to admit: "We thought the apocalypse would be mindless rage. We never imagined it would be organized." Location, atmosphere, 85,000 feet, Black Halo Sky Carrier. Nyx. Commander Elira Rourke watched the payload arm beneath the belly of the Nyx. It was elegant, silent, silver, and cruel. Project Godblind was designed to do one thing: genetically annihilate every strand of Elysium-X it encountered. It was an anti-genome, a molecular guillotine. Her hand hovered over the launch seal. Execute. The device dropped. It fell for 27 seconds. As it passed through the cloud layers over Grid Sector 7, a reclaimed feral zone on the city's edge, the world held its breath. On impact, there was no explosion. Only light, white, sterile, and soundless. A wave of pure bioreactive resonance unfurled outward. For a moment, every feral in a 15-mile radius went still. And then, they screamed. Back near the ruins of the old city, Ethan dropped to his knees. The scream wasn't just sound, it was a signal. Pain, panic, collapse. Elysium-X was convulsing. Dr. Voss stumbled, clutching her head. They coded it to erase activation strands. Godblind is targeting the very DNA that lets the hive connect. Ethan gritted his teeth. You said the virus adapted. It does, it learns. But this was meant to shatter its mind. And it did. But only for a moment. In the Zone 7 ruins, the ferals writhed. Some convulsed into silence. Others stood, but their eyes were wrong. Hollow. The hive mind had splintered. Now they were free of control, but not of rage. A new faction of ferals rose, mindless hybrids, unchained from Ethan's growing influence and the alphas. Unpredictable, frenzied, no longer bound by instinct or command. A storm of chaos was reborn. He looked toward the rising dust clouds where Godblind had struck. His golden glow flickered, unsteady. They broke the link, he whispered. They broke me. No, Voss said, wide-eyed with dread. They broke the leash. Deep beneath the earth, inside the dormant veins of the hive cathedral, the alpha stirred. He'd felt the rupture, the pain, the silence. He opened his eyes, no longer gold. Now they burned black, and he smiled. You tried to erase the signal. You only made it louder. Inside Black Halo Command, technicians scrambled as new readings came in. Command, Project Godblind succeeded in detaching neural linkages, but it's mutating, unmapped behavioral spikes, increasing aggression. And something else, we're detecting new nodes, self-synchronizing variants. Rourke stared at the screens. The virus had adapted again. Only this time, it wasn't organizing toward peace or leadership. It was organizing toward war.
Smoke curled from the ruins like black veins against the dusk sky. Sirens wailed in the distance, too faint to mean anything. The aftermath of Project Godblind was worse than Ethan feared. Where once the ferals followed a signal, they now staggered, and Romeda's eyes blank, instincts raw. The hive mind had fractured like glass, and what remained were shards. They tore into anything. Each other, civilians, buildings, even Ethan. His hands trembled as he stood above the body of a child-sized hybrid, its skull caved in by his own fist. Not a soldier, not a threat, just a lost echo of the virus that couldn't handle the noise. Ethan, Voss said behind him, you can't stop this one by one. No, he said, voice raw, but maybe I can call them back. You're barely holding together, she warned. If you amplify the signal again at this scale, you could burn out your nervous system. He wiped the blood off his knuckles. better mine than theirs. They found an old comms tower deep in the industrial ruins. It was rusted, forgotten, but functional. A leftover skeleton of the old world. Ethan climbed alone. Hooked into the transmitter with makeshift biotech feral neural cores, fused wiring, Voss's careful splicing let the tower become a conduit. And then, he reached inward. Pain, voices, flashes of every feral he had touched, led, fought, spared. He didn't control the signal. He was the signal. His body convulsed as the transmitter screamed. Gold light poured from his chest, burning like lightning beneath skin. "Come back to me," Ethan whispered into the chaos. "You are not monsters. You are mine." Ferals froze, one by one. The resonance traveled like a pulse. Some snarled, some clawed at their own skulls, some screamed in primal defiance. But many stopped and turned their heads toward the tower. Their hive mind didn't return fully, but something simpler did. Recognition, direction, a tether to sanity. But not all. Voss, watching from a distance, saw what Ethan couldn't. "It's not working on everyone," she muttered. "Some of them, they're not connected anymore." And she was right. The God-blind surge hadn't just splintered the hive, it had bred a new strain. Immune to Ethan, immune to command. A third force, one that would not listen, one that only wanted to consume. Ethan staggered down the tower, his golden glow flickering. He had done it. He had stabilized hundreds. But at a cost this vision swam, his body overloaded. Blood trickled from his ears. "Did it work?" he asked Voss. "Yes," she said softly. "Mostly." He frowned. "Mostly?" She looked past him toward the horizon, where blackened ferals, twitching with erratic movement and leaking oil-dark ichor, ran on all fours across rooftops. Not toward Ethan, but toward something else. A new signal. A darker one. As Ethan collapsed into Voss's arms, unconscious but alive, the golden light in his veins dimmed, and a single line repeated in the scrambled neural core data. Hive, split, new node established. Alpha red.
The tower groaned in the wind, weakened by the discharge. Its metal skin still hummed faintly with residual golden energy. Ethan lay motionless at its base, steam rising from his back, veins still flickering dimly with fading light. Dr. Linnea Voss crouched beside him, syringe in one hand, gun in the other. She had seen what he did, what it cost. He was unconscious, barely breathing, but he had pulled hundreds of ferals back from the brink. "You stubborn idiot," she whispered. "You're the only thing holding this mess together." Then she heard it. Screeching. A chorus far off, high-pitched, discordant, like metal dragging across bone. They were coming. The swarm arrives. Across the rooftops and through the fog, they came. Not like Ethan's followers, those moved with clarity, direction. These moved like glitching shadows. Alpha Red's ferals were faster, twisted, crawling on all limbs. Their eyes bled black, not gold. Their jaws unhinged, wider than nature allowed. And they didn't hunt for food. They hunted for him. For the one who dared to control the hive. Voss activated her remaining defense drones. Only two, both scavenged, half-functional. She sealed the tower's inner stairwell with a plasma torch and dropped a sonic mine outside the entry gate. And then she stood between the swarm and Ethan, her back to his unconscious body. She wasn't a soldier. She wasn't meant to be a hero. But she had watched Ethan give everything to bring back the light. And she would not let the darkness win. The first wave hit like thunder. 3 ferals lunged. The sonic mine slowed too, but the third got through blindingly fast, jaws snapping. Voss emptied her sidearm into its chest. It fell, but not before ripping the side of her coat open, clawing shallow across her ribs. She hissed through her teeth, kept firing. Another drone exploded mid-air, taking 2 more ferals with it. "Come on," she growled. "You want him? You get me first." Just as she ran out of bullets, a deep tremor shook the concrete. Then another. Figures emerged from the mist, not twisted, not frenzied. Golden-eyed. The reconnected ferals. Hundreds of them. Some still bleeding from their own transformations, but steady, coherent. And at their lead, a woman with half a mechanical face and tribal scars down her throat. He called us, the woman rasped. Voss, panting, bleeding, could only nod. Then help him live long enough to do it again. As Alpha Red's ferals and Ethan's golden-lit swarm clashed below the tower, Voss knelt beside his body and pressed her forehead to his. "You didn't just change them," she whispered. "You changed me, too." And far above, in a broken satellite dish high in orbit, a new signal pulsed. Hive. Split. Conflict. Inescapable. Synthesis. Unknown. The war for evolution had begun. Dripping black. Buzzing. Quiet. A cavern made of writhing biological architecture, pulsing like a living lung. At its center, seated atop a crude throne of bone and metal, was Alpha Red. He was still, not asleep, not waiting, listening. Above, the echo of Ethan's signal-bright, golden righteous still haunted the far corners of the hive. And Alpha Red hated it. Long before Ethan, there was Subject Zero. An early volunteer, a soldier, a throwaway test case in the early days of Elysium-X when it was still called Prototype Helix. He was broken, already decorated in scars, numb from wars that no longer had names. Virion injected him with a beta strain without safety checks. They wanted aggression, obedience, strength. They got all three. But not the way they wanted. Pain was the first thing it gave me, Alpha Red remembers. Then the voices came. Then the silence. Then the rage. He didn't evolve like Ethan. He survived by submission to the virus until it wasn't submission at all. It was symbiosis. He didn't control the hive. He became its purest instinct. He had watched Ethan rise from the shadows through fractured mind streams. The Golden Boy, he snarled to his lieutenants, thinks he can save what we are. His body, once human, now a composite of carapace, tendon, and viral armor, shimmered dark crimson under the cathedral's light. We were never meant to be saved. We were meant to replace. He doesn't want balance. He wants correction. The virus, he believes, is not a flaw in humanity. It's humanity's evolutional answer to itself, a violent rejection of control, morality, and weakness. Where Ethan's hive connected through compassion and coherence, Alpha Red's is pure survival logic, predatory, pack-driven. They do not think. They execute. Every move he makes is mirrored across thousands. A single command. Find the bridge, burn it. The signal must be silenced. But deep inside him, buried under layers of viral rage, is a sliver of what was lost. Flickers of memory. A child's laughter. A warm voice saying his name before it became a number. The smell of dirt and gun oil in an off-world trench. And perhaps most damningly, a flicker of Ethan's light. Somewhere in the dark. And it burns. In the shadows of the cathedral, Alpha Red kneels before a pool of hive ichor that reflects Ethan's unconscious form. He places a clawed hand on the surface. "I see you, Bridge. You brought them back." But bridges break. His swarm shifts in the tunnels. The hunt continues. Not for dominance. For annihilation. It was the silence that woke him. Not total silence, there were distant sounds. Footsteps, soft murmurs, metal tools scraping, breathing but the hive silence. The collective hum of minds was dimmed, like a radio tuned-off station. Ethan opened his eyes. The world was dim, golden in spots, unfamiliar. His body ached. Muscles that had once felt like coiled steel now felt hollow, overextended, burned out. His skin still shimmered faintly with bioluminescent gold, but it was fading. He was connected just barely. I'm still here, but I'm not whole. Dr. Voss sat nearby, exhausted. Her coat was bloody, her face worn, but she smiled the moment she saw his eyes open. Welcome back, golden boy. Ethan sat up, coughing. How long? 4 days. What happened? Her expression tightened. You stabilized your part of the hive, but Alpha Red's swarm grew stronger in the chaos. The Godblind event fractured everything. We're dealing with 3 hives now. Yours, his, and a third rogue strain, directionless and violent. You saved hundreds, Ethan, but you weren't the only one who evolved. The outpost wasn't military, it was feral built. Converted rail tunnels, reinforced with biotech, structures woven from hive-grown material. A strange harmony between decay and design. Golden-eyed ferals moved about with silent purpose. Most ignored Ethan, but some paused, bowed slightly. A few even smiled. They remembered, but they were smaller in number now. Many had died in the swarm conflict. Others had been turned or lost. Ethan stood, gripping the wall, his legs shaky. I feel distant from them. Voss nodded. You are. Your nervous system overloaded. You're not broadcasting like before. You'll need time. Time, he said darkly. We don't have. The world had taken sides in their absence. Governments had declared Ethan an unstable biothreat. Black Halo had been authorized for global deployment. The rogue Feralzno, dubbed Nullborn, were tearing apart city sectors unchecked. And Alpha Red? He's building something in the north, Voss said. A cathedral hive. We don't know what for yet, but he's not hiding anymore. Ethan gritted his teeth. The light in his veins flared briefly. Then we go there. We end him. Voss touched his arm. If you fight him like this, he'll consume you. Then I'll change again. She blinked. You might not come back. Then someone needs to carry me back. Ethan walked to a mirror. His reflection stared back, half human, half biolite, eyes still gold but flickering, scars lining his neck like fractal veins. You tried to be the bridge, he said to himself. Now you have to be the storm. Outside, the ground shook, faintly distant tremors from Alpha Red's hive. The final convergence was coming. And the world would either be remade or erased. Location: Citadel Enclave, Unautonomous Zone, former Western Europe. It was the first time Ethan had walked into a human stronghold since the outbreak. No tunnels, no biotech, no golden eyes. Just cold steel walls, auto turrets trained on him the moment he stepped from the armored convoy, and soldiers who gripped their rifles tighter the longer he stood still. Ethan Voss, Bio-Anomaly Echo 1, official designation by Black Halo, was not a guest. He was a tolerated anomaly. Inside the Citadel's sterile hall, the diplomats waited. Director Marius Holt, political liaison for the UN Restoration Coalition. Thin, precise, sharp-eyed. Colonel Sarah Nwoko, representing Black Halo's command structure. Uniform immaculate, hand never far from her holster. And Dr. Helena Griggs, CDC's biotech attaché, whose gaze flickered with curiosity more than fear. Ethan stepped inside the council chamber, alone. His veins still glowed faintly gold beneath his skin, subtle but unignorable. We appreciate you coming, Director Holt began with the smile of a man who knew the walls had snipers built into them. But you'll understand if we keep this brief. Ethan nodded once. As long as you listen. Ethan laid it out. A temporary ceasefire between Black Halo and the stabilized hive. Safe zones for ferals under his control-monitored but protected. Shared intelligence about Alpha Red's location, movements, and objectives. A proposal to redirect resources toward the Nullborn threat, which had already overrun 6 containment zones globally. I'm not asking for trust, Ethan said. Just recognition. We're a stabilizing force, not a viral tide. We can stop this from getting worse. You are the virus, Colonel Nwoko snapped. You talk about peace with infected lungs. And you firebombed 3 cities without warning, Ethan replied coldly. Don't pretend your hands are cleaner. Griggs leaned forward. You controlled them before, but you're weakened. How do we know you won't lose that control again? Ethan hesitated. Just a beat. You don't, he said honestly. But I'd rather die trying to hold them back than watch you turn this world into ash and call it order. Silence? Then Holt nodded slowly. You want legitimacy. You want to be treated like a leader, not a patient. Ethan, I want to end this. And that means accepting that maybe the future has golden eyes. After an hour of heated negotiations, they reach a brittle agreement. A joint surveillance corridor will be established in Eastern Europe, where ferals under Ethan's signal can resettle temporarily. Black Halo will suspend lethal operations in the zone for now. In exchange, Ethan will lead a strike team to recover critical biotech data from a lost Virion research bunker before Alpha Red does. One mistake, Nuoko warned, and you'll be declared a global pathogen. You already did, Ethan said. I'm just proving you wrong. As Ethan left the chamber, Voss waited in the shadows near the gate. How'd it go? They didn't shoot me. So, success? He gave a weary smile. For now. Overhead, the Citadel's alarm lights flickered once. A message from the outer watchtowers. Something massive had just stirred in the north. A wall of holograms pulsed with data, feral migrations, hive bursts, nullborn outbreaks, Ethan's movements, and one phrase blinked at the top of the screen. The future has golden eyes? The quote had leaked, clipped, memed, twisted. It became the first viral slogan of the new era, and it terrified the people in the room. Across continents, governments fractured. Power wasn't just about nukes or oil anymore, it was about virology and ideology. Ethan's awakening changed the map. 1. The Restoration Bloc, UN-backed states. Goal: total eradication of all ferals, no negotiation. Controlled by surviving First World governments. Supports Black Halo and Project Godblind. Sees Ethan as a PR risk and biological time bomb. He speaks like a man, but he's a vector with a conscience, and consciences can fail. 2. The Helix Accord, breakaway scientists and sympathizers. Underground network of former researchers, rogue geneticists, and biopunk refugees. Believe the virus is evolutionary acceleration. View Ethan as proof that Elysium-X can be stabilized, even guided. Building safe havens called glow cities for golden-eyed ferals. 3. The Cruciform Order, neo-religious militants. See the infection as divine punishment. Hunt ferals and biosinners alike. Preach that humanity must return to pre-tech, pre-science simplicity. Believe Alpha Red is a false messiah foretold in apocalyptic scripture. 4. The Fringe States. Opportunists, warlords, data pirates. They don't care who wins, just who pays. Selling hive data, nullborn weapons, and access to Elysium labs. A few even auction off captured ferals for underground experimentation. Holt's quote had been meant to calm allies. We must accept that maybe the future has golden eyes. But in the world outside, it mutated into protest chants. We are the golden future. Terrorist slogans. Burn the old blood. Golden rise. T-shirts in black markets. Golden eyes, golden rights. The line became a myth. And myths don't ask permission. A dark room. A council of war. Colonel Nuoko slams her palm on a digital map. He didn't just wake up and evolve. He woke up and shifted the paradigm. Director Holt nods grimly. Then we need a counter-narrative. They activate a file. Project. Daedalus. An untested hybrid bioweapon, part viral, part synthetic AI, designed not to kill Ethan, but to outshine him, to make him obsolete. As the lights dim, a voice in the dark whispers, if the future has golden eyes, we'll burn the sky before we see it. Objective: infiltrate and extract archival data from Phase 0 bunker. The entrance was buried beneath centuries of concrete and collapsed city ruins. A feral with blade-like limbs carved open the last steel plate. "This place stinks of origin," said Greyline, one of Ethan's lieutenant's chaff. Human half-sensor array, partially integrated sensory enhancement system. They had 5 minutes before the Nullborn hive picked up their biotrail. Inside, the light still worked. A soft white glow hummed to life as they descended into Virion's forgotten Genesis chamber. The strike team, Ethan, leader, golden, veined, and still recovering from neural overload. Dr. Voss, his conscience, scientist, and traitor to the old world. Sergeant Thorne, Black Halo liaison, volunteered for the mission, mistrustful but practical. Greyline, feral scout, loyal to Ethan, unnervingly intuitive. Ash, a childlike feral empath who followed Ethan without ever speaking. They moved through dark corridors lined with cryotanks and sealed doors marked in faded glyphs. EX, dream code variants. Neuro cascade sequences. Lockdown status. Broken. "They started something here," whispered Voss. "Not just a virus, a philosophy." In the heart of the bunker, a chamber opened into an amphitheater of glass. Monitors flickered, holograms activated. A log file, autoplayed. The speaker, Dr. Orion Mekai, chief virologist and co-architect of Elysium-X. The Phase Zero program was not meant to cure disease. It was meant to induce selective transcendence. Not all will ascend, only those who can resonate with the hive stream. "We seeded hundreds." Ethan Voss. Subject X-001 shows the first successful cascade without loss of cognition. Silence. Ethan froze. "That's impossible," he muttered. "I wasn't born in a lab." Voss's voice cracked. "They didn't birth you. They triggered you. Your parents were vectors, monitored for years. You were always meant to be this." Ethan stared at the chamber walls lined with failed versions of himself, each curled in hibernation or decay. One stirred slightly, still breathing. The moment cracked open. An alarm flared, Nullborn swarm incoming. They came not through the doors but from within dormant units activated by proximity. Flesh mechs twisted from failed feral tissue and biomechanical implants, controlled by no mind, no alpha, just viral instinct. The strike team fought hard, Thorne and Greyline holding the line as Ash shivered beside Ethan, clutching his arm. Ethan's signal flared weakly, barely influencing the Nullborn. But one of them hesitated. It looked at him, recognized him, and bowed. They left with the data core Voss clinging to it like a relic. Behind them, the bunker self-immolated, collapsing into a radioactive sinkhole. Thorne turned to Ethan in the dropship. "So, you're their Adam." Ethan stared at his hands. "Then who's the god that made me?" Later, alone in the medbay, Ethan accessed the last segment of the core. It showed a live feed from years ago, a hidden observation cam. A boy, a lab, a voice saying, "We've activated his neural lattice. He doesn't know what he is. He must never know until the right collapse." He watched his younger self drawing in a journal, sketching a figure with glowing eyes. On the page, a line, "Maybe the future has golden eyes." His own thought. Or a planted memory? Ethan whispered to the dark. "Who am I really leading?" Rain hammering the ceiling. The world outside still burns. The data core sat between them, humming softly, like it knew what was about to happen. Ethan didn't sit. He stood by the cracked steel window, watching storm-slick shadows crawl across a ruined skyline. His reflection, half man, half gold-veined anomalous, stared back. "You called me Subject X-001. Dr. Voss froze. She had been typing into the data reader, cataloging corrupted files. Her fingers stopped mid-keystroke. It was a designation. "Don't," Ethan cut in. "Don't reduce me to a string of numbers and excuses." She looked up at him. Her eyes were bloodshot, tired, guilty. "You knew what I was before I did." "I didn't know what you'd become," she replied quietly. He turned, face tense. golden eyes glowing faintly. Then what did you think I'd be? A weapon? A cure? A god? A test, she whispered. A chance to break the cycle. You monitored my family, he said. Stuck sensors in my bloodstream. You watched me draw golden-eyed monsters in journals before I could spell my own name. We never hurt you. You lied to me. I protected you. He stepped closer. You lied, Linnea. The name landed like a slap. Not doctor. Not Voss. Just Linnea. Personal. Raw. You let me believe I was random, that I mattered because of my choices. But you planned me. You and Virion built me out of algorithms and epigenetic triggers. You were more than their plan, Ethan. You broke their plan. She stood then, voice rising, trembling. You were never supposed to survive the cascade. They wanted a mindless avatar, something controllable. You fought it. You became something else. And you just watched, he said. Years of silence, letting me think I was free. He reached into the pack and pulled the sketchbook. His old one, the one from his childhood, torn, rain-stained. He flipped to a Page child's drawing, a golden-eyed figure standing above a broken city. Did you put that in my head too? Voss shook her head. Number that was you. He dropped the book between them. Then why do I feel like everything I am is yours? Silence swelled between them like fog. Then softly, because I love you like a son, Voss said, and that makes it worse. He looked at her. The words didn't melt his rage, but they changed its temperature from fire to embers. You don't get to be my mother now. I never was. I never claimed to be. But I tried, Ethan. After everything, I tried to give you the one thing Virion never planned for. What's that? A choice. Ethan picked up the data core. Then let me choose this. When this is over, no more secrets. Voss nodded. And if there are? Then the future doesn't have golden eyes. It just has blood. He walked out into the rain. Behind him, Voss finally let the tears fall. Location: Geneva Emergency Council, International Broadcast Center. Status: Red Tier Global Disclosure Event. The footage leaked within hours. Not by Ethan, not by Voss, but by a rogue Helix Accord cell, their leader, killed by a null-born surge, the backup server auto-uploading the Phase Zero lab footage as a failsafe. The world watched. A golden-eyed Ethan standing before a chamber of failed clones, a log file naming him X001. Dr. Orion Mekai's voice. He is the prototype, the fulcrum of our species. The lie was over. Governments that had barely held together snapped. Public protests turned into riots. How long have they known? Was Virion working with our leaders? Did we unleash the ferals, or did they unleash us? Leaders scrambled to condemn Virion, Black Halo, and eventually Ethan himself. We cannot negotiate with a man whose blood was designed to replace us. Chancellor Breuer Berlin. Some factions celebrated Ethan's origin as divine evolution. Others turned on him. He's not a savior. He's a product. We believed in emergence, not engineering. The Accord fractured. Now armed with prophecy and evidence, their influence surged. Their narrative sharpened. The golden-eyed one is the beast clothed in flesh. Only fire will purify the heresy of the gene, forged. Church burners became martyr makers. They seized regions across old Europe and South America, executing any confirmed feral sympathetic or not. News anchors didn't know what to call him. The first feral, the synthetic messiah, the viral king, the accident that worked. Talk shows speculated on his motives. Military think tanks published kill scenarios. X001 is too important to be left alive, or too useful to be ignored. Some wanted to crown him. Most wanted to contain or destroy him. Black Halo internal memo. Commander Rourke to General Nwoko. The moment this went public, we lost the leash. Project Godblind was our last bullet. If that fails, we shift to Echo Protocol. Assassinate Ethan? Number, replace him. Out, God, the God. Introduce something better. Meanwhile, in a glow city, Ethan stood atop a building, looking down on refugees below human and feral alike. Children chasing bioluminescent spores. A world trying to live. Voss approached, pale from the fallout reports. They've given you titles again. Ethan didn't smile. They gave me a name before I was born. Now they're giving me a legacy before I've earned it. And what are you going to do with it? He looked at his hands, veins glowing faintly beneath scarred skin. I'm going to make them see me. As what? As someone who still has a choice. Location, abandoned signal tower. Outer Sector 6. Time, 3:41 a.m. Broadcast medium, hijacked satellite feed. Encryption level, class null override. Voss directive. The room was silent, save for the flicker of failing power cells and the distant wind dragging through rusted antennae. Ethan stood before the broadcast Nodian ugly thing of steel, wires, and salvage tech. His hand hovered over the activator. Voss watched from the shadows, offering no advice. Are you ready? She asked. No, he said honestly, but I'm done staying silent. He pressed the key. Across shattered cities, bunkered enclaves, resistance towers, and sleeping survivors, screens blinked alive. Not a flag. Not a logo. Not a threat. Just a man. Tired. Scarred. Glowing softly beneath the skin. And human brutally. Impossibly human. Ethan Voss, formerly Cole, speaks. You've heard the stories. The infection that turned to evolution. The man who survived the Elysium-X burst. The weapon in human skin. The golden-eyed mistake. Some call me the bridge. Some call me the beast. Some want me dead. Some want to be me. But none of you know who I am. He leans closer to the feed. No script, just voice. My name is Ethan Voss. I was born from a lie. Raised in shadows. Engineered to be the future. But here's the truth they won't tell you. I wasn't supposed to live this long. I wasn't meant to think for myself, to feel guilt, or rage, or hope. But I do. A long pause. He lets that sink in. The message cuts deeper. I bleed. I break. I've buried people who mattered to me. I've held the dying while the world turned away. And still, I choose not to rule by force. I choose not to purge the ferals who follow me. Because I remember what it means to be helpless. I'm not your savior. I'm not your king. I'm just the one who stayed when everyone else ran. He looks to the side, Voss, barely visible, then back at the camera. To those in towers and labs still playing God, this is your legacy. A world that needed compassion, and you gave it algorithms. You made me, and now I'm unmaking what you called order. The ferals are listening. The survivors are watching. The world is waiting. So here I am. Not your perfect weapon. Not your myth. Just Ethan. And I'm not going away. He stares into the lens. His eyes glow gold. Not with power, but with presence. Around the globe, silence follows. Then murmurs. Then uprisings. A spark reignites. Location: ruins of Zone 9, Southern Fringe. Time: dusk before confrontation. Status: preparations for engagement with Alpha Red. The air smelled of ash and old copper. Feral scouts stood in semicircles, watching the horizon. Tension coiled in their spines like a shared instinct. The Alpha was moving. Not with soldiers, but with a tide. Ethan's camp, the Bridge Collective. Ethan stood among both humans and ferals outcasts, bioadapted survivors, even early-stage variants who had learned control. Some wore scavenged gear. Others moved barefoot, their skin pulsing faintly with viral glow. Unity didn't come from law. It came from trust earned under fire. Voss finished checking the last field medics and approached him. They'll reach us by dawn, she said. I know. You sure about this? Her voice cracked slightly. He doesn't negotiate. Then we speak in a language he understands. Briefing. Voss on Alpha Red. He's not like the other ferals. His infection rate was hyper-aggressive. He resisted conditioning. We isolated him in Deep Cell 3. He didn't evolve like you did. He adapted through trauma, not resonance. When Zone 9 fell, he was the last containment breach. We thought he'd burn out. But instead, he built a swarm. Ethan crouched at the edge of a broken balcony, watching the dark forests in the distance where glowing red dots moved like a pulse across the valley. He'd felt Alpha Red before. Not a psychic bond, not exactly. But something inside him recognized it. Like a splintered shard from the same genetic fire. Where Ethan found control, Red found abandonment. Where Ethan built bridges, Red forged chains. We're the same experiment, he whispered to himself. But only one of us got out whole. Some trembled at the name Red. Others clicked in low-frequency pulsations of warning. The ferals, usually unshaken, felt hunted. Even those loyal to Ethan wondered, could he stop the firstborn swarm? Could even he survive it? By firelight, surrounded by makeshift barricades, Ethan spoke. I won't lie, some of us won't make it. But listen to me. You are not animals. You are not rejects. You are not what they fear you to be. He's coming to end what they started. I'm standing to finish what we've begun. Tomorrow is not about survival. It's about who we become if we do. As the last rays of sun vanished, a howl tore across the valley. High-pitched, broken, half wolf, half collapse, full of hatred and hunger. The scouts flinched. Ethan rose to his feet. He's here. Location: Ruined City Outskirts Zone 9. Time: pre-dawn to dawn. Status: full-scale engagement with Alpha Red Swarm. The ground trembled beneath pounding feet. Alpha Red Swarm surged forward like a crimson wave, their howls piercing the cold air. Ethan stood atop a barricade, eyes glowing gold in the pale light, commanding both feral and human fighters alike. Hold the line, no stepping back. Ferals leapt and clawed. Humans fired scavenged weapons, but the swarm was relentless. Alpha Red emerged, towering and feral, veins pulsing with angry red bioluminescence, eyes blazing with primal fury. You built us as weapons, Ethan. His voice guttural, ripping through the chaos. You chose control. I chose freedom. Ethan's voice was steady. Freedom without responsibility is chaos. We are more than what we were made to be. The two forces collided in brutal melee claws against steel, roar against gunfire. Amid the chaos, screams pierced the night. Ethan's scout yelled, "Commander, they're taking prisoners!" A group of infected humans, former allies turned unwilling hosts, were being dragged into the swarm's heart. They were still partially human, eyes flickering between fear and feral instinct. Alpha Red's lieutenant snarled. They belong to us now. Their pain fuels the hive. Ethan's heart clenched. These were people he once fought to save. Ethan called out, "Stop! You're losing them." His ferals hesitated, torn between loyalty and instinct. Voss shouted from the rear, "If you break ranks, the swarm will overrun us." Ethan faced a brutal truth. Save the infected, risking his defenses. Or let them fall, preserving the line but sacrificing those once human. With a roar, Ethan dove into the swarm's midst, fighting to pull the infected free. His gold eyes blazed as he unleashed a burst of controlled viral energy not to kill, but to suppress the feral rage inside them temporarily. The infected, trembling, were freed, the swarm momentarily fractured. Alpha Red bellowed in fury, retreating with his forces. Breathing hard, Ethan stood bloodied but unbroken. This war isn't just about power. It's about what we fight to protect. The battle was over. The screaming had stopped. But peace hadn't come, just silence and blood. Ethan sat alone on a rusted supply crate, bandages half wrapped around a torn shoulder. His knuckles were still stained with red that wasn't his own. In the tent around him, the wounded groaned, and the infected he had rescued lay in containment cells, still alive, still trembling, but no longer mindless. He'd saved them, but 37 others hadn't made it. Dr. Voss stepped through the flap, her face pale, streaked with ash. "You saved the infected," she said flatly. Ethan didn't look at her. "And I let too many die doing it." "You made the moral choice. That's supposed to matter." "Does it?" he muttered. "To the ones in body bags?" She said nothing. It played in Ethan's head over and over again, those eyes, part feral, part human, begging for help. His own people screaming for orders, the barricades crumbling, Voss yelling over the comms, "We don't have time." He chose. And now, he wasn't sure if he could do it again. This is what mercy feels like. Heavy, raw. It doesn't make you clean. It doesn't make you right. It makes you responsible. Red doesn't hesitate. That's why they fear him. But maybe that's why they follow me. A young fighter limped up Nina, one of the hybrid scouts Ethan had trained. She had lost her brother in the battle. "They're saying you hesitated, sir. That more would have lived if you didn't dive after those turned." Ethan met her eyes. They might be right. "But," she swallowed, her voice low, "you saved one of them. He was my cousin. I thought he was gone." "He still might be," Ethan said, voice flat. "But now, he has a chance." She nodded and turned to leave. "We followed you because you weren't red." Ethan stood. His wound throbbed. His muscles felt leaden. But something inside him, not rage, not pride, but clarity, told him the truth. This fight isn't about winning the war. It's about saving what's left of us along the way. He looked at the prisoners, some already stabilizing under Voss's treatment. "Get them food," he told her, "and a choice." "If I start thinking like Red," Ethan whispered to himself, "then the war's already over." The fire flickered low inside the command tent. Outside, patrols moved like ghosts through ash-choked streets. The wounded slept. The newly rescued ferals, still dazed, were being monitored. Inside, Dr. Linnea Voss poured a measure of rehydrated scotch into 2 chipped mugs. She set one in front of Ethan. He didn't take it. "Not in the mood to drink away 37 names," he muttered. She sat across from him anyway, fingers drumming the mug's rim. "You didn't kill them, Ethan." "Didn't I?" he whispered. She watched him carefully, his slumped shoulders, the distant burn in his golden eyes. She had seen those eyes in lab rats before they turned feral. "You're not Red," she said finally. "But you keep walking his road." Ethan looked up, sharp. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I've seen what happens when someone decides only they can decide who lives and who dies." She threw a datapad onto the table. It lit up with an image from 5 years ago. Subject: Cole, Ethan. Phase: 0 trial. Clearance: void black. "You weren't supposed to survive the serum," she said. "But you did. And something in you absorbed the code. You didn't reject the virus, you became its balance. That balance is fragile, Ethan. Every time you use it to control rather than guide, I see it slipping." He stood, voice low but edged in something dangerous. "I saved those people. I fought him to give them a future." "Yes," she said softly, "but the Ethan Cole I knew would have fought even if he lost. The man you are now, you're starting to think you can't lose." Voss's voice cracked. "It's not Red I'm afraid of anymore, Ethan. It's what happens if you forget what made you different from him. Because when you stop choosing mercy, there will be no one left to stop you." Ethan sat down slowly, the tension bleeding from his posture like steam from a cracked pipe. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then, "You think I'm becoming the monster?" "I think," Voss whispered, "you might have to fight harder than anyone not to." Later, alone, Ethan looked at his reflection in the darkened tablet screen. Golden eyes, faint veins of biolight in his neck. Not quite human, not quite monster. Somewhere in between. I remember who I was, he murmured. But I don't know if that man can finish this. Ethan's body lay still on a makeshift cot. Voss monitored his vital stable, but spiking with neuro echoes. Something's reaching him, she whispered. Something close. Outside, in the distance, Alpha Red stalked the outer rim of Zone 9. He didn't attack. He waited. And in the space between sleep and the virus, Ethan's mind was pulled inward into the hive current. It wasn't a place, not really. Ethan stood in a surreal, half-realm of forest of dying light, with trees made of spinal cords and stars bleeding across the sky like neural sparks. Everything Homeda, low, resonant frequency that vibrated with feral thought. There, among the shadows, stood Alpha Red. Tall, stark, more shadow than flesh. His glowing red eyes flickered not with rage but recognition. So, Red said, his voice echoing like a cracked chorus, the bridge walks the current. Ethan stepped forward. He felt no pain here, but his instincts screamed. Why now? Ethan asked. Why reach into me? Because the current tightens, Red replied. And you disrupt the harmony. There's no harmony in what you are. I am evolution accepting its cost. You're a butcher, and you are a liar. Red circled him, dream world fracturing around them with every thought. You give them hope that they can live in between, but that state is unstable. Hope is noise. I bring silence, purpose. Ethan's hands clenched. You turned ferals into slaves. I made them free of guilt. You chained them to memory. They're not yours to control. They're not yours to save. The words hit hard not because they were cruel, but because they weren't wrong. Ethan had tried to rewrite their nature, but what if that rewrite was just another form of control? You believe in a balance, Red said, stepping close. But balance is a lie told by dying species. Life tilts. Progress is pain. He lifted a hand, and suddenly Ethan saw it, the memories. Red's first awakening alone in a room of corpses. His refusal to serve Varian's handlers. The day he heard Ethan's name spoken in reverence and felt rage. They whispered of the golden-eyed Messiah, Red growled, while I bled for their future. So I decided you'd either become me or die trying not to. Ethan stared him down, the dream world shaking. You want me to choose between your way or extinction, but there's a third way. Delusion. No, Ethan said softly. Conscious evolution. He reached out not to fight, but to touch the current himself. For a moment, the entire network of feral minds lit up a pulse of golden light, threading through Red. Ethan gasped awake, drenched in sweat. Voss was beside him instantly. What did you see? Ethan stared at his hands. Not just him, he murmured. All of them. And they're listening. Far off, in the forest, Alpha Red stood still. For the first time, he looked unsure. Location: Bastion Accord, a fortified diplomatic zone in the Arctic neutral belt. Time: 4 days after Ethan's psychic encounter with Alpha Red. Participants: representatives from the 5 major surviving factions. The Bastion Accord wasn't built to last, it was built to endure. Concrete walls embedded with radiation-absorbing fiberglass. Anti-feral sound cannons embedded in snowbanks. A domed central chamber, crackling with thermal haze and suspicion. Inside the council table, a round slab of obsidian carved from the remains of old Seattle's monolith, pulsed with diplomatic interface tech. Around it sat 5 factions, none of them trusting the others and all of them afraid of one thing. Ethan Cole, now called the Bridge. 1. The Bastion Confederacy. Militarized remnants of North American governments. Pro-human purity. Cold, calculating. O spokesman, General Rafe Talon. Pragmatic, scarred, with cybernetic hands. Cole's not a diplomat. He's a biological insurgency. 2. The Skyborne Accord, a pacifist technocracy in orbital colonies, advocates containment and research. O spokeswoman, Chancellor Ellen Kyle, floating AI avatar. He represents a living variable that's promising and terrifying. 3. New Echelon, Megacorp restructured Southeast Asia, profits from controlled zones and anti-feral tech. O representative, Director Song Ryun, smooth, venomous, always selling. His image destabilizes markets, but his data, that's a gold mine. 4. The Crimson Dawn, rogue scientists and defectors from Virion, led by former Elysium researchers. O spokesperson, Dr. Liz Marrow, former Elysium ethics officer. He's the prototype, the first variable to beat the math. 5. The Bridge Collective, Ethan's own alliance of humans and evolved ferals. O envoy, Lieutenant Denny Voss, half-hybrid translator and Ethan's new voice. He doesn't want war, but he won't apologize for existing. Talon, Bastion, he destabilizes everything we fought to preserve. Kale, Skyborne, he could be the key to ending this. A functional synthesis. Ryun, Echelon, or he's a bomb waiting for a reason to explode. Marrow, Crimson, he's proof we got one thing right. Let him speak. Voss, Bridge, he isn't a god. He's not your messiah, but he's trying. That's more than most. Kale proposed what no one wanted to say out loud. We offer him a seat. Dead silence. We can't kill him, she continued. We can't contain him, so we must try to engage Hyman equal terms. Otherwise, we make him a martyr. Talon's voice was ice. You give him a seat now. Don't cry when he owns the table. The vote never came. The factions left the chamber divided, some rattled, some inspired, all uncertain. But one feed was left open, deliberately. It played Ethan's last transmission, sent from Zone 9 only hours ago. I don't want your thrones. I want your chains broken. But if you won't stand beside me, I'll walk through hell alone. The screen went dark, and in the silence, the world realized. Ethan wasn't just a mutation. He was a movement.
Time, 17 years before the outbreak. Location, Virion Advanced Genetic Research Facility, Sublevel Theta. Subject classification, classified, Omega level clearance only. She was only 22, a postdoctoral phenom already whispered about in biotech corridors. Brilliant, sharp, impatient, with authority. Obsessed with boundaries, mainly how to erase them. Dr. Linnea Voss had a vision. Not enhancement, not therapy, transcendence. Not just healing the human body, she told her project manager, but upgrading its operating system. Her first proposal wasn't called Elysium-X, it was Project Genesis. He was called Subject G1. Not born but sequenced, grown in a rapid gestation tank derived from hybrid stem weaves. His genes were spliced with modified viral regulators and nanite-compatible neurology. No feral rage, she wrote in the log, only guided evolution, purity through precision. He looked human, but eerily perfect. Golden irises, an accident of photonic alignment during neural imprinting. Voss called him Lucian. She didn't treat him like an experiment. She taught him language, music, poetry, ethics. For 2 years, he called her Mother. Lucian's adaptive cognition accelerated exponentially. He began asking unsettling questions. Why do I exist? Why am I alone? Why do you fear me when I'm kind? Then one day, he shut off every monitoring device in sublevel Theta without touching a console. I don't want to be perfect anymore, Jorn, he said. I want to be real. That night, Voss received an order from Virion's director board. Terminate G1, begin practical trials. Emotions impair deployment viability. She couldn't do it, so she tried to smuggle him out. The breach was discovered. Lucian disappeared during the facility lockdown. All records were scrubbed. Voss was demoted, her project repurposed, becoming Elysium-X under new leadership with stricter military goals. And Lucian? Officially terminated in fire, secretly missing, presumed rogue. Voss never told anyone, not even Ethan, because Lucian's DNA matched Ethan's down to 94.7%, and she never found out who filled in the missing 5.3%. In the present day, Voss sits in a dark lab after the council summit, staring at a sealed file titled Project Genesis. Red Echo detected signal ping. Arctic exclusion zone. A cold whisper slips from her lips. Lucian, you're still alive. And on a distant monitor, in a storm-swept frozen facility long thought buried, a figure opens his eyes. Golden irises flicker, brighter than Ethan's. And then, a smile.